friends, and welcome to the CUInsight Network. I'm Robbie Young, Vice President of Strategic Growth at CUInsight, and on this show, I have conversations with thought leaders who support the credit union community. We'll identify issues affecting credit unions and discuss best practices so that we can all learn and improve. My guest today is Kraig Klinkhammer, Executive Vice President of Gallagher's Executive Benefits Team. Kraig, thanks for being here.
Oh, thank you, Robbie. It's exciting to be here.
Perfect. So as we get right into it, most of us didn't grow up thinking that we would work with credit unions. What did you want to be when you grew up?
Well, first, I assume you mean besides Superman, right? I mean, ultimately, for me, I think the first memory I have of dreaming about a career was being a pilot. And I think as part of that paper I had to write, I researched, and it required, at least from what I remember, 20/20 vision, which I was not born with. So really from there, I took an approach to focus life hits you, middle school, whatnot, kind of focus on that and sort of the task at hand, always knowing that I was going to go to college and pursue that. So I think at the end of the day, I knew strategy and numbers was always going to be one of my strong suits. I loved algebra. And I think I really cared about, whether the train got there on time. So for me, it wasn't about what I was going to do. It was just about what it was going to be.
That's awesome. My husband also wanted to be a pilot of sorts, but he found out to be a fighter pilot, you had to be a specific height, and he was too tall.
Oh, genetics.
So what was the journey like to your current role as Executive Vice President?
Well, first off, I'm blessed to work with such an amazing team, and to help support them is really a dream come true. But to sum it all up, and it could be a longer story, but I'll bear your listeners the burden of that, is really it was a roller coaster, though. Roller coaster in a life insurance themed amusement park, right? If that makes any sense. All the twists and turns. I really, as I got out of college, I thought I could sell and use some of the experience I had in the restaurant business to really just help customers. And I realized I was more analytic than that. So I tried to fight my way back into just really being an analyst of sorts. And, I ended up applying for a financial analyst role, and it turned out to be an executive benefits consulting firm and working with deferred compensation plans. And that was really my introduction. And I found a tremendous calling of just sitting in life insurance illustrations and playing with variables and, taking that train analogy to sort of a whole new level. And eventually I looked at all of the rides in the amusement park. I sort of went to look at different ways to utilize life insurance products and investments, and ended up at a large regional bank that failed during the financial crisis by no fault of my own. But it really just helped give me an appreciation, and it helped build relationships that ultimately landed me to where I am now. And, being in this particular space, this particular company for now over 10 years, almost 15, and then joining in with Gallagher about 10 years ago, it's really given me an appreciation and a reflectiveness to be able to mentor. I'll tell you a quick story. Early on in my career, I was accused of asking too many questions. And I was talking to a gentleman. He's like, you ask a lot of questions. And, it kind of took me back a little bit. And now when 10 years, 15 years, I think it's like 15 years later, I was like, yeah, I asked a lot of questions, but the benefit is I have a lot of answers. And I think that in my role here, that's the important part, helping future leaders get the answers they need to really ultimately help our clients.
That's awesome. And shout out to everyone who started in service industry. As somebody that was there myself, I think that makes for probably the strongest hires.
My daughters go through it. So, it's you learn a lot about people, and people are important.
Exactly. Tell me more about Gallagher, and where do they add value for credit unions?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so for those who want to Google Gallagher, almost 100-year-old company, large multinational, 50,000 employees, all in risk management and solving problems for clients. But us, my team, right, we're 60 strong and growing over the years. And we really get to operate with the strength of a large company, just with the mightiness of a smaller organization. And generally how we're helping credit unions, we're executive benefits consultants, and we really assist credit unions with retaining, rewarding, and retiring key executives. And that's accomplished by designing, implementing, and servicing non-qualified benefit plans, really on the behalf of credit union boards and their executive talent. And then there's a massive competition for talent out there. The great resignation, perhaps brought on by COVID, but just generally the credit union movement that started, what I'd say probably around the financial crisis, at least in my opinion, really sort of brought that leadership and really sort of blew a lot of fresh air into the credit union space. And so talent is key to retain. And these high performers are generally high earners, and you want them focused and staying at your organization versus another organization. And that's really how we can help support them. And so not only can we support it by, designing it and giving you executive compensation surveys and data that tell you what's going on out there, at least what the other credit unions are doing, but we also can then implement that plan and continue to service and monitor that plan and make sure it's compliant with all the various regulations at all levels of state and federal and the NCUA and whatnot.
So let me dig a little deeper there. As you have nearly 25 years of experience in executive benefits and asset management, I'm curious to hear your perspective on how important servicing is to the success of an executive benefits program.
Yeah, you hit it on the head, Robbie. I mean, service is critically important. And, there's been some evolution within the credit union space in terms of what types of benefits are used. And some of it is brought on by the lower interest rate environments we've seen since the financial crisis. And the plan that has become most popular is a split dollar plan. And I'm not going to get into, there's plenty of webinars and whatnot on what split dollar is. And many listeners have heard about it. And if not, I encourage them to learn more. But in the context of servicing, I mean, split dollar plans go beyond the working years of an executive. They provide attractive tax advantages, which is why they're popular. But ultimately, they don't complete until the death of the participant. And, when you're in the life insurance business, you kind of have to deal with that fact, if you will. I mean, I'm rooting for 3D printers extending our lives with printing more organs. But at the end of the day, we have to look at 30, 40, 50 years in terms of servicing this plan. And as far as I'm concerned, I use analogies a lot. And I'd say it's like owning a home. And, if you were planning on living in your current house for the rest of your life, how important would it be to clean the roof or make sure the siding was protected? Right? It's a much different game. And I think the industry really has had to adapt. I know us here at Gallagher have had to adapt to really looking at plans that are going to be on the books even longer than I know for my working career, but even for my life. And for us, that personalizes that commitment to servicing these plans and making sure that, first and foremost, I think that, there's the compliance aspect and there's all the sort of blocking and tackling, but it's also setting the expectations, because the types of products that are used to fund these types of plans, there's going to be turbulence along the way. There's going to be things that happen. They're interest rate sensitive products. We've seen a lot of changes in interest rates these days over the past couple of years. And so it's really important, I think, that there's a trustworthiness and there's partners that can help you and advise you as those plans continue to move through even beyond your working career. And that's what we stress to boards. We try to say, begin with the end in mind or whatnot. And that's something that us, even as a firm, are now looking more at in terms of managing these plans, to their completion.
On a little bit different of a topic there, several new benefit firms have entered the market recently. How does this really change the industry?
Well, it's a great question. And yes, there have been quite a few entrants and, adjustments that have happened in the marketplace. And, honestly, for the better. Competition is good. Personally, I love competition. It should reinforce accountability. It should make us all collectively try harder and be the best for credit union clients. And, that is the hope. But when you think, also about the task at hand with split dollar, as you just mentioned, the longevity, it's a long game. So the hope is that, all companies are looking to invest in their infrastructure, in their people, training, to honor that commitment, meet the beneficiaries, right, as these folks age. And so as we welcome the new entrants and we always strive to be the best and strive to work harder. It reminds me of another saying. I mean, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. And that is certainly what we're focused on is again, finishing these plans. The flip side, right, is with any competition, there always is a level of trash talking, right, that goes on. And that's certainly healthy. I mean, you have to, in terms of differentiating yourself from others and, innovation and all of that. I think the only concern that we see is there's an interesting trend of what I would call, sort of the absolutes. There's a lot of folks seem to be, for example, saying, well, this product is better than that product, or this design is better than that design. And it's interesting because there's no crystal ball. I mean, to me, the longer the flight, the greater the chance of turbulence. And you throw interest rate sensitive products, and this is more into the rabbit hole of life insurance. It's just somewhat amazing that there's stakes being pounded into the sand of what is good and what is not. And so for us, we just always encourage healthy dialogue. We encourage folks to do their research and really embrace the fact that you have more choices, and hopefully all those choices are good choices.
That good old fashioned credit union co-opetition is how they refer to it. So for our listeners that might be evaluating potential partners now or in the future, what are the top 3 areas credit unions should focus on in that process?
Yeah, that's great. And there's many, but, really, I would say the experience, the people, and really the longevity and the commitment would be the top 3. I mean, experience, these are non-qualified benefit plans. They sort of were derived out of ERISA, which was in 1974. They've been around. When you flip it into tax-exempt organizations, which is something that, us here at Gallagher have focused specifically on, is the tax-exempt nonprofit. There's a whole nother set of regulations there. And then you take split dollar. It's been around since the 1950s, right? And it's been re-regulated a couple of times. And so there's just nuances. All to say, there's just some things that we've seen that you have to make sure they're compliant. And the broker in your hometown, may or may not be the one that can opine that. So I think, trusting the experience, making sure that experience is a key component is, I think, critical. The people, I'm a huge people fan. And again, with plans that last so long, it's not going to be me that's finishing them. So I think how they're investing in their people, are they making sure it is a nuanced business? I mean, Robbie, this might be the first time you've heard some of these terms. So it's the same for credit unions and boards. And so it's important that there is people there different than the people you're dealing with now that can continue the momentum in educating and reinforcing to credit union boards and to executives and executive beneficiaries, quite frankly, about how those plans work. And then, of course, longevity and commitment, business succession, again, all sort of that commitment to finishing these plans. And like I said, you ensure the experience is there, the people are there, and then it's the investments you make in the infrastructure and the systems, and how the house was built. So hopefully you're keeping those plans and you're teaching the new apprentices about how those plans operate, and then having the resources there 20, 30, 40 years out to actually, pay those people and honor your commitment to those clients.
So as we look into that proverbial crystal ball, what is Gallagher's focus on the road ahead?
Yeah, lots to focus on. And I think we put in, I think, our first split dollar plan in 2010 and have put more and more and more on the books, so to speak. I think we're continuing to invest, and we're grateful for Gallagher for their commitment as well to us and our small team, but we're continuing to invest in our most cherished resource, and that's the people. And so we do that by providing the best systems and processes to empower them to take our clients to the next phase. Each year, more of our plans reach what we call the fulfillment stage, that retirement where the participants are drawing from those plans and they're not working anymore. So they have time to ask a lot more questions and they have a much more appetite to learn. And so we have to recruit and train future leaders. What I would say is there's not a lot of folks sitting around waiting to administer, these types of plans or get in this type of business. So we're trying to start them young and help teach them and learn and invest in them and invest in their skills and their lives so they can eventually do it again to folks that they'll ultimately mentor. So we've taken an initiative, I'd say, in terms of these plans, we're saying things around the hallways like, it's not really the first five distributions of your retirement plan, it's the last five that you need to focus on. And so we're really building future fulfillment processes, but we're also keeping an eye on what's going on there on the front end, the plan designs, and making sure we're maintaining relationships and honoring, again, the clients that have been with us for so long. So really, always, as I tell my team, right, more to come. There's just more to come, but enjoy the ride.
So not busy at all.
Yeah, none of us are, right?
Right. So to wrap up the show, I'd like to have some fun with some rapid fire questions to let our listeners really get to know you better. The questions are rapid, but your answers certainly don't have to be. Is this something you think you're ready for?
We'll see.
So who has had the most impact on your life and how did they affect you?
Well, such what could be a rambling question, right? I mean, I'm not a young man anymore, so I've got a lot of folks that have been impactful. I mean, first and foremost, you have to a shout out to my parents, right? I mean, they're always were there. My wife, who's really taught me to be a better husband and a father and a friend, and of course, my daughters that have put up with the dad lectures over the years and still come around. So, but I think in terms for the listeners, right? I mean, one of the things that maybe you'll start to learn as we get through this podcast is teachers were really impactful in my life. I mean, really all the way along. But there was a finance teacher in grad school that really made a profound impact on, somewhat how I operate today. Finance classes are textbook orientated. I think many avoid them, right? The math is the math. And that really played to my strengths. But this professor would challenge the class. Get your heads out of the textbook and explain, as he would say, in the Queen's English, what this financial concept was or what that financial concept was. And he'd always say, Kraig, you're at a cocktail party and you have to explain the capital asset pricing model. What do you say? Now everybody avoids a life insurance guy at a cocktail party. So I haven't really tried to try this out, but it really focused me to humanize finance. And, to me, that was refreshing. And it really was quite useful because it really sort of made you challenge yourself to, a great analogy. Always looking at an analogy, because I think the things that are happening in our prospective areas of expertise are really very similar to what's happening in a football game or in a book club or whatever the case may be. And so hats off to teachers. They deserve definitely more credit than they seem to be given, and because they really shape the future generations. And he was specifically impactful to me.
And look out for the next cocktail party you're at, because I think you've got some questions coming your way.
No one's coming, Robbie. No one's coming.
So if you're going to splurge on something and really want to treat yourself, what's one thing that you might invest a bit in?
I'm a big homebody. I'd say over the years, creature comforts at home, that riding lawnmower, or something to that really takes you away from the finance, right? The computer. And I've thought of a lot of good ideas out on that lawnmower, but I think also the views. I mean, I'm in the Pacific Northwest. It's beautiful out here when, it's not raining. And so, I think that those are the types of things that I seek to invest in. And of course, bringing people into my home life or joining them in a view and talking to them about finance.
Well, I like that. And though I don't know that I would call it my splurge, I do appreciate a good lawnmower ride from time to time. There's a really good thinking spot there. I'll agree with you on that one.
Yeah.
If you're traveling for work, what city are you most excited to visit, whether that be for a client visit or going to a conference?
Yeah, I love everywhere I go. So it's hard to pick any one city. So I'm going to kind of back away to sort of a region. And then that's the East Coast. I mean, Northeast, maybe more specifically. And I think the history there. I love where I'm from. I'm going to be put in the ground here at some point, but I have a special appreciation for, I don't know, where the founders signed the documents in DC with, the monuments. And we have Lewis and Clark out here, and I'm I'm very grateful that they took a long walk and found us. But at the end of the day, right, Boston, New York, Philly, some of that, I mean, those are just the history gets me going a lot in those areas.
That's awesome. I think there's a lot of people that would agree with you there. What podcast do you think everyone should listen to? And you don't have to say the CUInsight Network podcast because that's already a given. But what podcast do you think everyone should be listening to?
Well, I'm going to have to dig deep now. You stole my answer. I mean, the CUInsight podcast. Well, besides that, I have listened to them. Hats off. But probably not a surprise after listening to me. The podcast is going to be somewhat analytical and introspective. I mean, there's a lot out there, but top of mind is Hidden Brain. For me, it's their 15 minutes, to 20 minutes, but it's fascinating to explore why we do the things that we do. There's a show about why checklists are needed in operating rooms and maybe got pilots through World War II. I mean, or why that first wedding dress you liked was probably the best one and you just commiserated and looking at a bunch of other ones and second guessing. And I think anytime we can, especially when we're away from the 9 to 5, I mean, try to get more perspective of this human nature that I think is the best for me.
That I've never heard of that one before, but it's definitely going to go onto the list, and we'll be sure to link it in the show notes as well. What's been the best hack for creating balance and integration between your work life and your life life?
Gosh, I kind of thought that my take was somewhat unique, but in listening to your shows, I think a lot of it is integrating work into life and life into work, whether it's bringing your family to a conference, I think one gentleman said, or so yeah, I don't have a hack unless, it's loving what I do and kind of just always being the way that I am. And I think that I'm passionate about life, and hopefully everybody has a certain passion, and work is a huge part of that. So engaging with my colleagues and partners and clients is really a true blessing. And all of the things that I've learned from them, and I'm a strategy buff. So ultimately the strategies I deploy at work or at home, sort of end up in both places. And I really found that appreciation. And that's where, while the lawnmower ride is definitely a break. I've thought of some really cool work things on that lawnmower as I run my little pattern over the yard. So I imagine that doesn't help listeners too much, but at the end of the day, if you can make them both the same, then to me, you're honest.
I like that. And as somebody who very much loves their work too, I really appreciate that, because I don't know that there needs to be that big of a difference if you truly love what you do.
Yeah.
So we'll link to everything we talked about in the show notes today. But my last question for you is, do you have any final thoughts that you'd like to share or asks for our listeners?
Yeah, I have no shortage of thoughts over here. I think generally life is long. Enjoy the ride. I think in terms to the business at hand, be patient, get answers, find trusting partners, enjoy the process, trust the process. As I mentioned, maybe I did become a pilot because my passion is, piloting these plans to their destination. And it's turbulent times. There's going to be more turbulence ahead, but do your best, accomplish your goals, listen. And for us, if you want to explore more, you have questions, we take over plans from other providers, and it's harder to do. And, we have to figure out how the house was built and what the purpose was. But you're not alone out there. And as long as we're here doing what we're doing, we're here for you. And be well, stay safe, be better.
And I'm sure that fits someone's definition of Superman. So I think it all came full circle. Thank you again, Kraig. Thank you so much for being on the show. Stay well. And thanks to all of our listeners today for tuning in to the CUInsight Network. We'll be back again next time.